first, I want to talk about this star-studded cast because it definitely may seem like a random bunch. I know a lot of people on social media were very confused. They were like, "How did Jason Derulo, Wiz Khalifa, and Let Us See all get in one 2 hour film?" So I want to know how the casting came together.
But interesting, the same question could be hit. How did Gladys and George Clinton and those guys all end up, in a similar life story? I mean, obviously, a couple different record labels. Um, and this was a story of all of them that made this story of my father the story that it was.
Mhm.
The casting of them was obviously, casting is one of the most crucial things anyone does for a movie, and part of that was born from this idea that I didn't want to show or spend time showing the music as it ended. I wanted to show where it began. I wanted to understand the origin stories. I didn't want to just, hear the final master version of Parliament's Mothership. I wanted to hear the first time George started writing those lyrics and figure out what that meant. And so finding artists today that embodied that essence was critical and crucial to the success of the film. And that was really working in conjunction with my brother, Evan Bogart, who's a great songwriter and music producer, kind of talking about who today is George Clinton, who today is doing that kind of music, who is breaking that kind of ground. And it was Wiz Khalifa. And who could possibly capture the power of Ron Isley, who was just a revolutionary musical talent at that time. And it's Jason Derulo. And who could possibly capture the vocals of Gladys Knight and bring us to the ceiling rafters? And that's the great Let Us See. And obviously the incredible Taylor Parks, embodying Donna, and Pink Sweats and embodying Bill Withers. So each one was focused as its own thing, which is maybe why it becomes so eclectic, but it's because those artists were eclectic. And so it was about finding who had the embodiment of the essence of those artists. And then once we did that, kind of the world was our oyster to be able to let them then reimagine these songs of how they began, not how they ended.
Yeah. I mean, as I'm speaking of casting, as I'm watching you speak right now, your mannerisms are very much similar, and just the way you have a way with words, just like your father. So, what was stopping you from playing you know,
Maybe that's a real bridge too far. A writer, director, producer, and
yeah,
star. No, acting was. Although I did start as an actor earlier on in my career, but that wasn't my thing. But it is funny that you mentioned that. Jeremy will often say, Jeremy Jordan, who plays my father, he will
mhm,
often say at some point he stopped playing my father and started playing me. And
yeah,
there was a moment I remember he was watching me, at the monitors, and I was doing something with my hands. And I remember looking at him and seeing him do that thing with his hands. And then in the take that we did, he did that thing with his hands, and he looked at me and said, "I'm now going to play you for a while."
yeah.
So I do think that's funny. He didn't only have my father's history, but he had, a couple mini versions of my father between me and my brothers, including my brother Brad, who's a producer on the film.
Mhm. I was recently speaking with Jeremy earlier, and I was saying that biopics sometimes get like a bad rep because sometimes people feel like they're not able to balance between like truth
Yeah.
and dramatization. So I wanted to know how you found that healthy balance, because I know there's some things in there that are true, and then there's some things that aren't. Kiss, like they had paint on their face at the time that they were with Casablanca, but the audience would not be able to recognize that essentially.
No, in that regard, with Kiss, it was really a question of, a lot of Kiss fans will say, well, you have to get the makeup exactly right. You have to get the costumes
Mhm.
exactly right. Well, but we actually did.
Yes.
The makeup and the costumes weren't where they became in 1974. In 1974, they were figuring it out, and they had really cheap, bad paint, so it would melt down their faces. That's what I wanted to capture. I wanted to
Yeah.
capture what actually happened, not what the audience's memory is also different, not just the people who experience it, but the audience who remember. I remember going to KissCon. No, you don't. The makeup was not like that yet. The
Yeah.
costumes weren't like that yet. The logo wasn't like that yet. So I really
Yeah.
wanted to show how that became what it became. But the interesting thing about, I do say early on in the film, not all of it's true. I have the character say, but most of it really is. The essence of everything that we tell in the story, the actual events that we tell, all happened. In any film, you do have to move some things around for a timeline, or you have to, combine some scenes, and maybe this character wasn't in that part of the scene, but was part of the other part of the scene. But we did not make up anything. And that was incredibly important. And certainly from a musical history part, we stated we had incredible fidelity, with one exception that I had shouted out loud, performed in the 1974 concert, and it would have been Firehouse. But I did that because it was such a great song, and I did that because the Neil character comments on it in terms of that. That was one musical leap that I took, but I also believed that Kiss was working on those songs early on, so that might have been one of their deeper cuts in their pocket. So you do make some changes to make something work, but this movie stays remarkably close to what actually happened in every regard.